The great city ship of the Valorians drifted through deep space like a shining island in the darkness. From a distance, it looked like a silver crescent with towers rising high, almost touching the stars. Inside, thousands of alien beings walked, through wide streets filled with glowing crystals and flowing streams of blue water. It was not just a ship. It was their world, their home, and their pride. At the center of this vast city ship stood the Hall of Guards. It was here that Commander Rael, leader of the Valorian Guard, held his post. Rael was known for his discipline and loyalty to his people. His armor was polished like glass, and his tall figure commanded respect wherever he went. For years he had led his guard with strength and certainty, never allowing weakness in their ranks. But now, Rael faced a problem unlike any before. The time of the great trial had come. Every cycle, the guard was tested through a ceremonial challenge called the Trial of Endurance. It was not meant as war, but as proof of loyalty and strength. The guard commander had to present warriors who could face the challenge. This year, however, the trial would be harder than ever. The Council of Elders had announced that the challenge would be watched by allies and rivals alike. To fail would mean shame for the guard. Rael had many strong warriors, but the trial demanded not just strength but patience, creativity, and courage. He wondered if his people could show all of these qualities at once. As he thought about this, one figure came to mind: the human. The human's name was Daniel. He was not a warrior of the guard. He had come to the Valorian city ship months ago as part of an exchange program between species. Humans were still new to the greater galaxy, and many aliens thought of them as fragile, soft, and quick to break. Yet, in the short time Daniel had lived among them, he had shown something unusual. He laughed easily, worked hard, and never turned away when someone asked for help. Commander Rael had watched him closely, curious about this strange visitor. Humans were short compared to Valorians, and their bodies seemed less powerful. But Daniel's eyes carried a quiet confidence, and his spirit seemed light even when tasks grew heavy. Rael called a private meeting in the Hall of Guards. The wide chamber echoed with his steps as he stood before Daniel. The human, dressed in simple clothes, looked small against the tall crystal pillars and silver floors of the hall. Still, Daniel stood straight, waiting calmly. "Daniel of Earth," Rael said, his voice strong. "The great trial approaches. It is a test of body and mind, one that even my finest warriors fear. Yet I call on you, a human, to stand in this battle. Do you accept?" The hall was silent. The alien guards who stood nearby whispered to each other. Many shook their heads. They expected the human to refuse, to step back, to admit weakness. No one believed he would agree. But Daniel did not even pause. He smiled, placed his hand over his chest, and said, "I agree," without second thoughts. The words spread through the hall like a spark. The alien guards stared, their eyes wide. Some muttered, "He does not understand the danger." Others said, "Humans are reckless." A few even laughed softly, certain he would regret his decision. But Commander Rael did not laugh. He studied Daniel's face carefully. There was no sign of foolishness or confusion. The human's voice had been steady, his choice clear. "You do not ask what the trial holds," Rael said slowly. "You do not ask what you must face." "Why?" Daniel shrugged gently. "Because I trust myself. If you think I should join, then I'll do it. Sometimes it's better not to overthink. You ask, I agree. Simple as that." Rael's brow furrowed. To the Valorian way of thinking, one must always weigh choices carefully, measure the risks, and prove readiness. Yet the human had accepted without hesitation. Not from pride, not from ignorance, but from trust, in himself and in those around him. The commander turned, walking a few steps away, his long cape brushing against the floor. He wondered if he had made a mistake. Then he glanced back. Daniel was still standing tall, calm, and sure of his choice. "Very well," Rael said at last. "You will stand in the trial beside my guard." Do not fail us. Daniel nodded. I won't. That night, word of the human's choice spread through the city ship. In the marketplaces, Valorian citizens whispered about him. In the training grounds, alien warriors shook their heads. Why would a human agree so quickly, they asked each other. Does he not know what the trial is? But some were curious. They had seen humans before, traders, explorers, and visitors from Earth. They had noticed their laughter, their adaptability, their strange way of making friends even with strangers. Perhaps, they wondered, this human might surprise them. Commander Raal returned to his private chamber and sat in silence. He remembered countless trials in the past. He remembered the pain and the pride, the victories and the failures. And now, he pictured Daniel's calm face, his quick answer, his simple trust. Was this recklessness? Or was it courage of a different kind? The commander could not yet decide. But one thing was certain. The trial of endurance would reveal the truth. As the city ship drifted through the endless night of space, a new story was beginning. A human had agreed to a challenge that even Valorians feared. And though many doubted, a quiet feeling stirred among them. Something rare, something close to hope. The guard commander had called on the human to battle. The human had agreed without second thoughts. And now the stars themselves seemed to wait for what would come next. The morning of preparation came quickly. The Valorian city ship glowed with soft silver light as artificial suns rose within its great domes. Streams of blue water shimmered through the streets, and tall crystal towers shone like fire in the sky. The trial of endurance was still days away, yet the entire city already felt the weight of it. Inside the guard training grounds, warriors gathered. Their tall forms moved with precision, their polished armor flashing with every step. Energy shields hummed as they activated, glowing around their bodies like protective auras. The clang of weapons striking practice targets echoed across the wide stone floors. To the Valorians, preparation was not just physical. It was a ceremony, a way of showing respect to the trial. Commander Raal stood on a balcony above them, his cape flowing, his sharp eyes watching every move. He measured every step, every strike, every breath. The trial demanded perfection, and he demanded the same from his guard. But one figure stood apart from the rest. Daniel, the human, was not wearing armor. He had no shield, no weapon, no shining crest of honor. Instead, he wore a simple white shirt, dark trousers, and shoes that looked plain compared to the glowing boots of the Valorian guard. While others drilled endlessly, Daniel stretched his arms, rolled his shoulders, and breathed deeply. The alien warriors stared at him, confused. Why is he not preparing as we do? One whispered. Does he think this is a game? Another muttered. Humans are strange, they do not take things seriously, a third said. But Daniel ignored their comments. He moved to a quiet corner of the training ground, sat cross-legged, and closed his eyes. His breathing slowed until it matched the rhythm of the flowing streams outside the dome. Commander Raal frowned from the balcony. He expected the human to copy the warriors, to run, to train, to push his body harder. Instead, Daniel sat still, calm as a stone. Later that day, Raal called Daniel into a private chamber. The room was round, with walls of silver crystal that reflected soft light. At the center stood a table carved from living stone. You prepare differently, Raal said, his deep voice steady. The guard train with armor, weapons, and shields. You sit in silence. Do you believe this will help you in the trial? Daniel smiled. Yes, Commander. For me, calm is the best preparation. If my mind is clear, I can face anything. Armor helps, but it cannot replace focus. Raal crossed his arms. Focus alone cannot move mountains. True, Daniel replied, nodding. But a clear mind can show you the path around the mountain. Sometimes strength is not about pushing harder. Sometimes it is about choosing wisely. The commander studied him. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight he could not ignore. For Valorians, strength was always shown through power and endurance. But perhaps humans measured strength differently. Still, Raal remained cautious. He said, "The trial is not easy. It will test your body, your spirit, and your patience. Even our strongest fear it. Why do you act so calm when others sweat and struggle?" Daniel's smile softened. "Because fear makes the challenge twice as hard. I don't want to waste energy worrying about what is ahead. I'll face it when I reach it." Raal was silent. He could not decide if the human's words were wisdom or foolishness, yet deep inside he felt a spark of respect. As days passed, the difference in preparation grew clearer. The Valorian warriors spent long hours sparring, lifting heavy stones, and running across shifting platforms. Their armor grew heavier each day as they trained under greater pressure. Sweat dripped from their brows and their muscles trembled from effort. Daniel, however, kept his training simple. He walked around the city ship's gardens, learning to balance on narrow stone paths. He practiced breathing exercises near the streams, watching the flow of water to calm his thoughts. Sometimes he would sit quietly with children in the public plazas, telling them stories of Earth, about forests, oceans, and skies filled with birds. At first, the guard mocked him. "He plays while we work," they said. "He wastes time with children instead of training. He will fail, and he will shame us all." But slowly some began to notice something unusual. While the warriors pushed themselves until they stumbled from exhaustion, Daniel remained steady. His steps were light, his face calm, his spirit bright. He never seemed worn down, never seemed afraid. Even a few young guards began to copy him, sitting quietly for moments of stillness or practicing balance instead of endless drills. They felt different afterward, clearer, sharper, lighter. "Commander," Raal observed all this in silence. His doubts remained, but curiosity grew stronger. The human was not like the others, and his way of preparing did not seem weak. It seemed different. One evening, as the artificial sun set within the great dome, Daniel stood at the edge of the viewing platform. Beyond the glass walls stretched the endless dark of space, filled with stars that shone like silver dust. Raal approached him quietly, his heavy boots echoing on the floor. "Do you miss your home?" he asked. Daniel turned, surprised by the commander's question. He nodded slowly. "Yes, Earth is far, but I think of it often. I miss the sky, the sound of waves, the green forests. But being here, with your people, is also important to me. I want to learn and I want to prove that humans can stand beside you." Raal looked at him for a long moment. The human's voice carried no pride, no arrogance, only sincerity. "You agreed to this trial without hesitation," Raal said. "Others doubted you. Even I doubted you. Yet you prepare in your own way, without fear. Perhaps there is something I do not yet understand about your kind." Daniel smiled gently. "Maybe. Or maybe we're not so different after all. You train your body. I train my mind. In the end, both of us want the same thing, to face the challenge with all we have." The commander gave a rare nod of approval. His respect for the human grew, even if he would not admit it aloud. As the day of the trial drew near, the city buzzed with anticipation. Crystals were polished, banners were hung, and citizens whispered of the strange human who had agreed so quickly. Some expected failure. Others began to hope for surprise. In the Hall of Guards, Commander Raal gathered his warriors. His deep voice filled the chamber. "The trial will test more than strength. It will test heart. Each of you must give all that you are. And remember, honor is not in victory alone, but in how you face the path before you." His eyes rested briefly on Daniel. The human stood calmly among the armored warriors, his plain clothes a sharp contrast to their shining suits. Yet he did not look out of place. He looked ready. The commander turned away, hiding the small spark of pride that had grown within him. The trial of endurance was about to begin, and soon the galaxy would see the truth. The Valorian Guard had their warriors, and among them stood a human, calm, steady, and waiting. The day of the great trial arrived. The entire city ship seemed to vibrate with excitement. Citizens filled the high balconies of the grand arena. a vast structure carved from silver stone and crystal. It was shaped like a circle, its ceiling open to the endless stars. From above, light poured down, making the floor shine like water. At the center of the arena stood a wide gate, glowing with pale blue energy. Beyond that gate waited the trial of endurance, a path filled with puzzles, obstacles, and illusions. It was not just a test of the body, but of spirit and mind. The one who reached the end would be honored. Those who failed would not face shame, but their effort would be remembered. The Valorian guard stood tall in their shining armor, lined up in perfect formation. Their crests glowed faintly, their weapons strapped at their sides. Though they knew, the trial required more than strength. Commander Ryal walked before them, his voice carrying across the arena. "Warriors of the Guard," he declared, "today you face the trial. The galaxy watches. Honor is not in winning alone, but in showing courage with each step. Give all that you are, do not falter." The guard pounded their fists to their chests in unison. The sound echoed like thunder through the arena. Among them stood Daniel, the human. He wore no armor, carried no weapon, and his clothes looked plain next to the silver glow of the Valorians. Yet he stood calmly, his eyes steady. The whispers of the crowd carried across the air. That is the human. He looks so small beside them. He cannot last long. Or perhaps he will surprise us. Commander Raoul's gaze fell upon Daniel for a moment. Though the commander showed no expression, inside he felt a quiet curiosity. Would the human prove his words true? Would calmness and trust be enough to face the trial? The blue gate pulsed, then opened with a sound like rushing wind. A bright path appeared, stretching into the unknown. Raoul lifted his arm. "Begin." The guard and Daniel stepped forward together, crossing into the trial. The first challenge was the desert of glass. A vast plain spread before them, filled with sharp, crystal dunes that glowed under the artificial sun. The heat shimmered in waves, and every step crunched against the shining ground. The Valorian warriors lowered their visors and activated cooling fields within their armor. They marched forward with heavy steps, their boots designed for harsh terrain. Daniel, without armor, walked lightly. He shaded his eyes with one hand, moving at an even pace. The crystals reflected the sun, but he did not complain. Instead, he breathed slowly, saving his energy. Some warriors rushed ahead, eager to prove themselves. They climbed the tall dunes, quickly, but their speed made them stumble on the sharp ground. Daniel moved more slowly, choosing steady paths between the dunes. While others slipped or grew tired, he kept walking at the same calm pace. One young guard noticed this and slowed his own steps, copying the human. To his surprise, the walk grew easier. He glanced at Daniel, who simply smiled as if to say, "Steady steps win the path." At last, the warriors crossed the desert and reached the second gate. Some were already breathing heavily, their armor heating despite the cooling fields. Daniel, though tired, still walked with a quiet rhythm. The second challenge was the Tower of Echoes. Before them rose a tall structure, smooth and shining, with walls that shifted and changed like flowing water. The goal was to reach the top. Valorian warriors leapt into action, their armor giving them strength. They climbed quickly, pressing their hands and feet against the moving walls. Yet the tower was clever. Each time they moved too fast, the walls shifted, throwing them back to the ground. Daniel watched quietly before starting. Instead of rushing, he placed his hands gently against the wall, waiting. He moved slowly, feeling the rhythm of the shifting surface. Step by step, he climbed. Where others slipped, he paused. Where others forced, he flowed. The crowd watching from the arena grew restless. "Why is the human so slow?" they whispered. But as minutes passed, they noticed he was higher than many who had tried rushing upward. One by one, warriors adjusted their movements, learning from him. Soon the tower carried them upward instead of throwing them down. By the time they reached the top, Daniel stood beside them, smiling, though sweat ran down his brow. Commander Raoul, watching through the crystal screens in the arena, felt his chest tighten with a quiet pride. The human had not just survived, he had guided others without saying a word. The third challenge was the path of illusions. The warriors stepped into a wide hall where strange lights floated in the air. The floor seemed to shift, turning into rivers, cliffs, or endless pits. Many stumbled, unsure of what was real. The Valorians relied on their scanners, but even the scanners failed to tell truth from trick. Frustration spread quickly among them. Daniel closed his eyes. He listened, not with his ears, but with his heart. The illusions were bright and loud, but the ground beneath him felt solid. He tapped his foot lightly, trusting the steady sound. With each breath, he walked forward as if the illusions did not exist. Some warriors called out, "How do you walk? So easily?" Daniel opened his eyes and said, "Don't look too hard. Trust what you feel." The words were simple, but they gave the others courage. Slowly, they began to follow his method, listening to the steady rhythm of their own steps. The illusions lost their power, and the warriors crossed the hall together. When they reached the far gate, the crowd above erupted with cheers. For the first time, many believed the human might truly endure. At the end of the third challenge, the warriors rested briefly in a quiet chamber. Water flowed through crystal fountains, and glowing fruits grew along the walls for refreshment. The guards sat heavily, breathing hard, their armor dented from the climb and scratched from the desert. Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor, drinking slowly from a small cup. He was tired, but his face still carried a calm smile. Commander Raal appeared in a projection above them. His deep voice filled the chamber. "You have passed the first stages. Few have reached this far with such strength. But the trial is far from over. Ahead lies the maze of shifting gravity. Many have failed there. Prepare yourselves." The warriors looked at each other with unease. The maze of gravity was famous for breaking even the strongest. Daniel simply nodded. His eyes shone with quiet determination. He whispered to himself, "One step at a time." As the warriors rose, the gate ahead glowed with blue light. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the next stage. The trial had begun, and already the human had shown something no one expected. He was not the fastest nor the strongest, but he was steady. His calmness spread to others, turning doubt into courage. The guard commander, watching silently, thought to himself, "Perhaps this human does not need armor or weapons. Perhaps his strength lies elsewhere. Perhaps this is what our people have been missing." And so, with hearts heavy but hopeful, the warriors stepped into the next stage of the trial. The gate opened with a low hum, and the warriors stepped into the next stage of the trial. Before them stretched the maze of shifting gravity. It was unlike anything they had faced before. Tall walls of crystal rose high into the air, twisting and bending like frozen waves. Strange lights flickered along the walls, and with each flicker, the pull of gravity changed. Sometimes the floor pushed them down so hard they could barely move. Other times the pull shifted sideways, dragging them toward the walls. At moments, it disappeared completely, leaving them floating helplessly. The Valorian warriors braced themselves, activating the stabilizers built into their armor. The small devices hummed, helping them stay balanced. Yet even with this technology, the maze remained treacherous. One wrong step, and they could be thrown against a wall or stuck floating in midair. Daniel stood among them, calm as always. He had no stabilizer, no special armor, only his own body and mind. He looked around quietly, studying how the lights flickered, how the walls shimmered, and how the pull of gravity followed. The commander's voice echoed faintly from a projection. "Above, many have failed here. The maze requires not only strength but understanding. Choose your steps carefully." The warriors moved forward. At once, the ground beneath them shifted. Some were dragged sideways into the wall, their armor scraping against the crystal surface. Others floated upward, flailing until their stabilizers pulled them down again. Daniel bent his knees slightly, spreading his arms for balance. He felt the change in his stomach before it showed in his body. When the pull grew heavy, he leaned forward and let his steps grow smaller. When it disappeared, he curled himself slightly, drifting gently until the pull returned. He smiled softly, To himself, "It's like the ocean currents back home," he thought. "You don't fight the waves, you move with them." The Valorian warriors struggled. Their armor gave them protection, but it also made them stiff. They tried to resist each shift of gravity, forcing their way through. But the more they resisted, the more they stumbled. One young warrior cried out in frustration, "This is impossible. The maze pulls in every direction." Daniel looked at him calmly. "Don't fight it," he said. "Feel the rhythm. The pull changes like a pattern. Watch the lights. They tell you where it will move next." The young warrior blinked, then followed Daniel's advice. He paused, waited for the lights to flicker, and stepped only when the pull grew lighter. To his surprise, he moved forward without being dragged aside. "By the stars," the young warrior whispered, "it works." Soon others began watching Daniel. They saw how he bent, paused, and flowed with each change instead of resisting. Slowly, they copied him. The maze that once seemed impossible began to open. As they pressed deeper, the maze grew trickier. The walls twisted tighter, the pulls came faster, and sometimes the warriors floated helplessly in the air. But Daniel remained steady. When he floated, he curled into a ball, spinning slightly until the next pull guided him down. When the ground grew heavy, he lowered his body and took short, patient steps. His movements looked simple, but they carried wisdom born from Earth's seas, mountains, and storms. The Valorians had never seen someone approach a challenge in this way. From above, Commander Royal watched in silence. His sharp eyes followed the humans' every move. "He does not fight the maze," Royal thought. "He listens to it, he learns its rhythm." The commander felt a stirring of respect deep in his chest. For years he had taught his warriors that strength meant pushing harder, standing firm, resisting all forces. But here was a human showing them another truth. That strength could also mean moving with the challenge, not against it. At last, the warriors reached the heart of the maze. Here, gravity spun in wild circles, pulling one way, then another in rapid bursts. The Valorians struggled, their stabilizers sparking under the strain. Some clung to the walls, gasping. Daniel closed his eyes. He took a slow breath, feeling the pattern. The pulls were wild but not random. They followed a hidden order like the beat of a drum. He whispered softly, 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. Step by step he moved, following the rhythm. His body tilted with each pull, but he never resisted. He allowed the gravity to carry him, then placed his feet down gently when the pull shifted again. The warriors watched in amazement. "He dances with the maze," one murmured. Inspired, they tried the same. They listened, felt, and moved in rhythm. Slowly, together, they crossed the wild heart of the maze. Finally, the last flicker of light came. The pull vanished, and before them opened a glowing gate. They had reached the end. As the warriors stepped into the next chamber, the crowd the arena erupted in cheers. For the first time in many years, the majority of the guard had passed the maze of shifting gravity, and at the center of their success was the human. Commander Rael appeared once more as a projection, his deep voice carrying pride he did not often show. "You have done well," he said. "Few have reached this far, and fewer still have done. So with such balance." He looked directly at Daniel. "Human of Earth, your way is not ours, yet it has brought many through the maze. Today you have taught us that strength is not only in resistance, but also in harmony." Daniel bowed his head slightly, smiling. "Thank you, Commander, but I didn't do it alone. Everyone found the rhythm. We just needed to listen." The warriors nodded in agreement. Some looked at Daniel with new respect, their earlier doubts fading into admiration. That night, as they rested in a chamber of soft light and flowing water, whispers filled the air. "The human saved us in the maze. He walks without fear. Perhaps humans are not weak after all." Daniel sat quietly, his back against a crystal wall. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright. He had not come to outshine the others. He had come to stand beside them. Commander Raoul, watching from afar, felt something he had not felt in many years: hope. The human had shown not only courage but creativity, and in doing so he had changed how the guard saw themselves. The trial was not yet over. Harder tests still waited ahead. But the turning point had come. The human was no longer just a visitor. He was becoming a guide, a spark, a symbol of something greater. As the artificial night fell across the city ship, one thought echoed through the halls. Perhaps the human will not only endure, perhaps he will lead us to a new way. The warriors entered the next chamber through a tall, glowing gate. The air inside felt heavy, not from gravity this time, but from something deeper. The walls were dark crystal, smooth like mirrors, stretching high above their heads. A dim silver light glowed from the ceiling, but it was soft and uncertain, as if the room itself was alive. "This is the Hall of Illusions." Commander Raoul's voice echoed from the projection above. "Here you will face not the weight of stone or the pull of gravity, but the shadows of your own spirit. What you see may not be real, but the struggle will be. Only those who face themselves can pass." The warriors glanced at each other uneasily. Even the strongest among them feared this chamber. Weapons and armor could not protect against one's own heart. At first the hall seemed calm. The warriors walked slowly, their boots echoing softly on the crystal floor. But then, the walls shimmered, and images began to appear. One warrior gasped, as he saw a reflection of himself stumbling in defeat. Another cried out as the walls showed his family looking disappointed in him. The illusions whispered doubts into their minds, pulling at their confidence. The Valorian warriors tried to push forward, but the illusions grew stronger with each step. Some fell to their knees, covering their faces. Others swung their arms, wildly trying to fight shadows that could not be touched. Daniel stopped where he stood. The illusions reached for him too. He saw Earth, his home, fading away. He saw his friends turning their backs. He heard voices whisper, "You do not belong here. You are too weak. You are only human." For a moment his chest tightened. His hands trembled. The hall seemed to press down on him, heavier than any gravity. But then he closed his eyes. He took a slow, deep breath. "These are not real," he told himself. "They are only fears. Fears can hurt only if I let them." He opened his eyes again, and instead of fighting the illusions, he faced them. He walked calmly toward the image of Earth fading away. He smiled softly. "I carry Earth with me no matter how far I go." The illusion flickered and broke. He turned to the voices that whispered he was too weak. He shook his head gently. "Maybe I am not the strongest, but strength is not the only thing that matters. I am still enough." The whispers vanished like mist. The hall grew brighter around him. Step by step he walked forward, and each time he accepted what he saw, the illusions dissolved. The Valorian warriors watched in astonishment. They had tried to fight the images, but fighting only made them stronger. The human was doing something different. He was not resisting, he was accepting. And because of that, the illusions lost their power. One young warrior, trembling as he saw his family turn away in shame, looked at Daniel desperately. "How do you do it? How do you walk so calmly?" Daniel placed a hand gently on the warrior's shoulder. "Don't fight it, don't run, just face it. Fear only grows when we refuse to look at it, accept it, and it fades." The warrior nodded, tears in his eyes. He stood, faced the illusion of his family, and whispered, "Even if I fail, I still honor them." Slowly, the image dissolved. One by one, the warriors followed Daniel's example. They faced the illusions, not with anger, but with courage of the heart. The hall that once echoed with cries of despair now grew calm. The silver light above grew brighter, filling the chamber with warmth. At last Daniel reached the far end of the hall. A great crystal door stood before him, glowing softly. He placed his hand on it, and the door opened. Behind him, the warriors gathered, their faces filled with relief and wonder. The crowd in the arena erupted in cheers. For generations, many had entered the Hall of Illusions, but few had walked through it so peacefully, and never before had a human done it. "Commander." Raoul's projection appeared above them once more. His voice was deep, but this time it carried something new: respect. "Human of Earth," Raoul said, "you have walked where many of my people have stumbled. You have shown us that fear cannot be fought with force, only with acceptance. Today, you have revealed a strength we did not understand." Daniel bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Commander, but the strength is not mine alone. Everyone here faced themselves. Everyone here passed." The warriors nodded. They knew his words were true. He had not walked ahead to leave them behind. He had guided them to walk beside him. That evening, the warriors rested in a quiet garden chamber filled with soft light and gentle streams. They spoke in low voices, their earlier doubts about the human replaced with admiration. He faced the illusions without fear. He showed us how to face ourselves. Perhaps humans are not weaker than us. Perhaps their strength is different. Daniel sat on a stone bench, listening to the flow of water. He did not boast, nor did he claim victory. He simply breathed, letting the calm fill him. Commander Raoul approached quietly. The other warriors straightened as he came near, but Daniel only looked up with a small smile. Raoul studied him for a long moment. "You continue to surprise me, human. When I called on you, I expected hesitation. Yet you agreed without pause. When you faced the maze, you taught us patience. And now, in the Hall of Illusions, you have shown us a truth we long ignored." Daniel tilted his head. "And what truth is that, Commander?" Raoul's voice softened. "That courage is not the absence of fear, but the acceptance of it. You have taught my guard what I could not." Daniel smiled gently. "Maybe we've both taught each other. I've learned from your people too: strength, discipline, loyalty. Those are things humans admire as well." For the first time, Commander Raoul allowed a small smile to cross his stern face. "Perhaps," he said. They stood in silence for a moment, the sound of water and light filling the air around them. The trial was not yet finished, but already something had changed. The guard no longer saw Daniel as an outsider. They saw him as one of them. And deep in Raoul's heart, a new thought began to grow. Perhaps this human is not here to follow. Perhaps he is here to lead. The trial still had one last stage. But after the Hall of Illusions, the Valorian Guard no longer doubted. They had seen the human spirit, and it had revealed something even greater than endurance. It had revealed the power of acceptance, the courage of the heart. And as the stars shone above the city ship, the galaxy waited for the final test. The next morning, the Valorian city ship was alive with energy. The great arena, a vast circle of silver stone, was filled with thousands of voices. The trial of honor had reached its final stage, and every citizen wanted to witness the ending. Above, the arena, banners of light shimmered in the air, carrying the symbol of the Valorian Guard. The people knew that today was not only about testing warriors, it was about proving the spirit of those who wished to stand among the finest defenders of their world. At the center of the arena, Daniel stood with the Valorian warriors who had journeyed with him through each trial. Their armor shone under the twin suns, and their eyes were steady, no longer clouded with doubt. Daniel felt the weight of the moment, but he did not fear it. He had walked this far, and he would walk the last steps with the same courage. The great gates opened, and Commander Raoul entered, his tall figure commanding silence. He carried no weapon. His voice, deep and steady, filled the arena. "Warriors, you have faced the maze of shifting walls. You have endured the chamber of gravity. You have crossed the Hall of Illusions. Each trial has tested not only your body, but your mind and your heart. Now comes the final test, unity." A low murmur passed through the crowd. Unity was not a trial of one, it was a trial of all. Raoul continued. "Strength alone cannot protect the galaxy. Discipline alone cannot carry us through storms. The Guard is built on something greater, the bond between warriors, the trust that binds them. Today, You will face a challenge that no single one of you can overcome. Only together can you prevail. The ground beneath them rumbled. Panels of stone shifted, and from the floor rose a great construct, an enormous machine of silver and black, shaped like a beast with many arms. Its eyes glowed with blue fire, and its body pulsed with energy. "The Sentinel," Raal announced. "It is no enemy, but it will not yield unless you stand as one." The warriors tightened their grips on their weapons. Daniel felt his heart quicken. The Sentinel towered above them, strong and unshaken, yet something in Raal's words rang clear in his mind. Only together can you prevail. The Sentinel moved. Its many arms swung in wide arcs, striking the ground with force that sent dust and sparks into the air. The warriors scattered at first, each one trying to find their own way to strike. Blades flashed, staffs swung, but the machine stood firm, unmoved by single attacks. "Together!" Daniel shouted. His voice cut through the chaos. The warriors hesitated, but then they remembered the maze, the chamber, the hall. Each time Daniel had shown them another way. They trusted his words. "Form a circle," he called. The Valorians gathered quickly, moving with precision. They surrounded the Sentinel, their weapons raised. The machine turned its head, its glowing eyes shifting from one warrior to another. "Strike as one," Daniel shouted. The warriors moved together, their weapons slashing at the same time, their strength joining into a single blow. The Sentinel staggered, its massive frame shaking for the first time. Cheers erupted from the crowd, but the machine was not finished. It spun, its arms lashing out in every direction. The warriors were thrown back, some stumbling, others dropping their weapons. Daniel pulled himself up quickly. "Hold the line! Do not fight alone!" He ran to a young warrior who had fallen, helped him to his feet, and together they rejoined the group. The Sentinel struck again, but this time the warriors braced themselves in pairs, supporting each other against the force. Slowly, step by step, they learned to move as one. When the Sentinel swung its arm, two warriors blocked while the others advanced. When it raised its glowing core, Daniel shouted for them to strike together, and their combined blows dimmed the light. The fight was long, but the unity grew stronger. The warriors no longer thought as individuals. They breathed together, moved together, struck together, and at the center of it, Daniel guided them, not as a commander above them, but as a friend among them. At last, the Sentinel faltered. Its arms dropped, its glowing eyes flickered, and its great body sank slowly back into the ground. The arena fell silent, and then a great cheer rose like thunder. The trial of unity was complete. Commander Raal stepped forward. His stern face was calm, but his eyes carried something rare: pride. He looked at the warriors, then at Daniel. "Today, you have shown what it means to be the Guard. You did not win by strength alone. You did not succeed by discipline alone. You prevailed because you stood together. That is the heart of the Guard." The crowd cheered louder, their voices shaking the walls of the arena. Raal turned to Daniel. His voice dropped slightly, but the words carried across the arena. "Human of Earth. When I first called you, I expected little. I thought you would falter, that you would doubt. But you agreed without hesitation, and with each trial, you have revealed something we had forgotten, that unity is more than command, more than obedience. It is trust, and trust you have earned." Daniel bowed his head, humbled by the words. "Thank you, Commander. But it was not me alone. It was all of us." The warriors around him nodded. They knew his words were true. He had not claimed victory for himself. He had shared it with everyone. Raal raised his hand, and silence fell again. "From this day you are not only a guest of the Valorian Guard. You are one of us, and the Guard will remember the name Daniel of Earth." The crowd erupted, chanting his name. "Daniel! Daniel!" The human stood quietly, his heart full. He had come as an outsider, but now he stood as part of something greater. That night, as the stars shone bright outside the city ship, Daniel sat with his fellow warriors in the garden chamber. They laughed, shared food, and told stories of the trials. The walls no longer separated them by species or origin. They were simply warriors, bonded by the journey they had taken together. Commander Ryal watched from a distance. For the first time in many years, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The guard was strong, but now it was stronger, not because of weapons or machines, but because of the lesson one human had brought. And far away, among the stars, a quiet thought stirred. If one human could teach the Valorian Guard such a lesson, what else might humanity bring to the galaxy? The trial was over. But the story of the human among the Valorian Guard was only beginning.